Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really foundational chapter from Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. Now, if you're studying international trade law, you've got to understand this stuff. It's the economic logic that so much of modern law is actually built on.
So here's our roadmap. We're going to walk through Smith's argument just like he laid it out. We'll start with his big idea, see the problem it creates in the real world, and then look at his solution and all the historical proof he uses to back it up. Trust me, by the end, you'll see exactly how this one chapter creates a framework for thinking about pretty much all of international trade.
Okay, first things first, we have to nail down the central thesis of this entire chapter. This is the one rule that, for Smith, changes everything. So what's he really saying here? Well, he's saying that specialization, the division of labor, is the key to getting wealthy. But, and this is the big but, you can only specialize if you have somewhere to sell your stuff. You can't spend your entire life making, say, just one part of a pin unless there are enough people out there to buy all those pins. It's that simple. A small market means no specialization.
Right, so that's the theory. But how does this play out in the real world? Well, Smith was brilliant at this. He didn't just leave it as some abstract idea. He gives us these really powerful, concrete examples to make it crystal clear.
He gives us this fantastic contrast. Think about it. In a big city like London, the market is so huge that a person can make a decent living just being a porter, literally just carrying things around. But you take that same person and put them in a tiny, remote village in the Scottish Highlands, and what happens? Well, a farmer there can't just be a farmer. He has to be his own butcher, his own baker, his own brewer, because there's just no one to sell to. The market is too small to support any of those specialized jobs.
Now check this out. To really show the power of specialization, Smith does the math on a nail maker. He figures that one skilled guy doing nothing but making nails all day could crank out a mind-boggling 300,000 of them in a single year. That's the incredible productivity you unlock with the division of labor. And here it is, the million-dollar question. You have this mountain of nails, this incredible output of labor, but if you're in that isolated village, who on earth is going to buy them all? Smith's conclusion is just brutal. The nailer might sell 1,000 nails, which is what he can make in a single day. So what happens to the other 299,000 nails? Nothing. They're worthless. All that labor is wasted. And so specialization itself becomes totally impossible. You just can't do it. So if the size of the market is the big roadblock, what's the solution? How do you connect that super productive nailer with customers who are miles and miles away? For Adam Smith, the answer wasn't some complex economic theory. It was a technology. It was water.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. I mean, look at these numbers. To move 200 tons of goods by land, you need a small army, 100 guys, 400 horses. To do the same thing by water, you need one ship and maybe 8 sailors. The efficiency gain is just staggering. This didn't just make trade cheaper, it made brand new markets possible that you couldn't have even dreamed of reaching before.
And the consequences of this are, well, world-changing. Smith is basically saying that without cheap water transport, the kind of global trade between a place like London and, say, Calcutta is a non-starter. It's just not going to happen. The cost to move things over land would be insane. Water carriage, quite literally, opened up the world for business.
Now, to really hammer this point home, Smith does what any good theorist does. He looks for proof in history. He shows that this link between water, markets, and civilization isn't some new idea from the 1700s. It's an ancient rule that's been playing out for thousands of years.
He points right to the Mediterranean Sea and says, look, this was the perfect incubator for commerce. Back before anyone had a compass, the Med was perfect. It was relatively calm, full of islands, and you were almost never out of sight of land. So sailors could just hop from port to port, connecting all these different cultures and creating the very first great international market.
And it wasn't just the Mediterranean. You see this pattern repeating itself everywhere. The first great civilizations. Where did they pop up? Along the Nile in Egypt, along the Ganges in Bengal, and all over the massive river and canal systems of eastern China. It's no coincidence. They all grew around these natural highways that made commerce possible.
All right, so every good argument needs to be tested from the other side. Smith gives us the negative proof. He asks, so what happens when this key geographical advantage is missing? What happens when you can't easily expand your market?
And he points to these huge inland areas of Africa and Asia. In the language of his time, he noted they remained in an uncivilized state for centuries. And his reasoning was purely economic. He argued it's because they lacked the key ingredient, navigable rivers or easy access to the sea. Without that, their market stayed small and local, and so did their economic development.
And right here, this is a point that should make any trade law student's ears perk up. It's not enough to just have a river. You need access to the open ocean. His example of the Danube is perfect. What good is a huge river to Austria or Hungary if some other country controls the part that flows into the sea? This is the very seed of some huge concepts in international law, right? Things like the right of innocent passage, freedom of navigation, and all the treaties that govern strategic choke points like canals and straits. It's all about guaranteeing access to that global market.
Okay, so let's put it all together. Let's recap this beautiful, unbreakable chain of logic that Smith builds. It really is the foundation for how we think about geography and trade.
It's just so elegant, isn't it? You start with one person becoming really good at one little thing. That requires a market. The size of that market limits how specialized you can get. Water carriage blows the doors off the market, making it huge. And therefore, wealth and civilization have always followed the water. It connects the work of one single person to the entire geography of the planet.
So this leaves us with a final, really important question, especially for your studies. We have satellites, we have the internet, we have jumbo jets, but how much has really changed? When you look at the legal fights over shipping lanes in the South China Sea, or the treaties that govern the Panama and Suez canals, you realize we are still grappling with the exact same fundamental reality that Smith identified over 200 years ago. Access to waterways is access to the world market, and controlling that access is and always will be a central issue of international law.